Hello, welcome to another deck tech. This one is black and white, Teysa Orzhov. This is actually Teysa, Scion of the Orzhov. And we're going to start with lands. Teysa, Scion of the Orzhov. Teysa, Orzhov Scion. Here she is. So she's a legendary creature, human advisor. Sacrifice 3 white creatures. Remove target creature from the game. Whenever another black creature you control is put into a graveyard from play, put a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying into play. She's a 2/3 for 2 for 3 mana, 2 colored, white and black. Very low cost, very efficient. She's a human. Isn't really applicable for this specific deck. I'm not going tribal, but if you build her yourself, you might want to lean into that. Sacrifice 3 white creatures. Remove target creature from the game means it is board control. Whenever another black creature you control is put into the graveyard from play, put a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying into play means a lot of creatures are going to be created and you're going to have more creatures to sacrifice for her first ability. That is the plan, at least. It's worked out so far. As the game continues, they've created lots and lots of different Teysas. This is the one I still play, and we'll start with Terrain Generator here. I like the art on it. It taps to add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. You pay 3, so it's self and 2 mana. Put a basic land card from your hand into play tapped. I like to think of it as paying 3 because it is sitting in your land zone, so it is 1 more land you're not using. We have not a lot of swamps, 3 of them from Zendikar. Full art. Very interesting design. Some sort of witch hunt. Pillars. And here we have the plains of Zendikar. Plateau. Hedrons. Some sort of vast desolation. That's an interesting canyon. Another plains from Zendikar. M14. Just admire it for a moment. I like what I saw from the spoilers of the new Ravnica lands. Very great design for the full arts of their cityscapes. They learned a lot from the last few cities they've been to. Here's a Jund Plains. Or Alara. I mean, I guess it would be Jund. Bant. Or Esper. Naya would be another plains from that place. Grixis is completely opposite though. Here we have Scoured Barrens. Scoured Baron enters the battlefield tapped. When Scoured Baron enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. It, of course, adds to your mana color of your commander, black and white. Black and white. Black and white. It's going to lose meaning by the end of this, because I keep saying it so much. Opal Palace. You tap it to add colorless. You tap 1 of any color. Tap itself. You add to your mana pool 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Of course you do. When you spend this mana to cast your commander, it enters the battlefield with +1/+1 counters equal to the number of times it's been cast from the command zone this game. The more times you play your commander, the better it gets. Amazing. For 1 mana. Here we have Temple of the False God. Add 2 to your mana pool if you control 5 or more lands. Ghost Quarter. You tap it, add colorless to your mana pool, tap it, sacrifice Ghost Quarter. Destroy target land. Its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle his or her library. This is a form of control. It does work in tandem with other control styles, more land recursion. There's not much land recursion in this deck specifically, but you want to be able to shut down annoying effects the opponent may play, like their own versions of these cards. An Urborg, for instance, but you want them to play an Urborg. Tainted Field. Because Tainted Field, as long as you control a swamp, this card produces black or white, but otherwise it produces colorless. Westvale Abbey. Tap to add colorless to your mana pool. Pay 5, tap, pay 1 life. Put a 1/1 white and black human cleric creature token onto the battlefield. Pay 5, tap and sacrifice 5 creatures. Transform Westvale Abbey, then untap it. As you can see, it has a symbol up here. It also has a numerator down here. Ormondal, Profane Prince, is a legendary creature demon. Flying, lifelink, indestructible haste. 9/7. Because you're creating 1/1 white-black creatures, it triggers Teysa's ability to create more 1/1 creatures. As well, she's going to be sacrificing creatures. Ormondal is your reward. A 9/7. With Grizzlebrand gone, the Skurstay eagerly awaited another demon to claim their devotion. Ormondal did not make them wait long. Innistrad is famous for werewolves, vampires, demons. Very fun set. These kinds of cards, very useful for this deck. Most decks, creating creatures, there's going to be a lot more creature production. The more sacrificing you can do means the more creatures you need to create. Here we have Marsh Flats. You tap it to pay 1 life and sacrifice this card. Search your library for a Plains or Swamp card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Obviously, you shuffle your deck after most interactions like this. It's very nice. Modern Horizons or something. But you need to search for Plains, specifically for Emeria Skyruin. Emeria Skyruin enters the battlefield tapped. This is from Zendikar, and Emeria was the creature they thought Emrakul was, so they named the land after its protector, Emrakul. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 7 or more planes, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Pay 1 mana. No, you don't pay any mana. Why do I keep thinking you need to pay mana for these effects? That's not until the creatures come in. You will need to pay mana for other cards, but when searching, you want to specify finding planes. Planes will speed this up. A good planes to search for is Godless Shrine. It's a land, a plains, and a swamp. Tap to add black or white to your mana pool. As Godless Shrine enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 life. If you don't, Godless Shrine enters the battlefield tapped. Judgment Without Hope. It depicts a church of the Orzhov. They are debt collectors, as well as religious folk. This would be an isolated chapel. Isolated chapel enters the battlefield unless you control a plains or a swamp. Tap to add black or white to your mana pool. Not every church is a place of faith. More incentivizing to search for specific cards. Shambling Vent is a very good creature land. Shambling Vent enters the battlefield tapped like most good cards. Adds black or white. Pay 1, black and white. Shambling Vent becomes a 2/3 with lifelink, white elemental creature. Until the end of turn, and it is still a land. Because it is still a land, it is susceptible to being destroyed, and next turn you won't have it for your mana pool, but otherwise, having lands late game that can activate effects is even better. Here we have Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx. It is a legendary land. You tap it to add 1 colorless, or you tap it with 2 other mana, so similar to paying 3 mana. You choose a color and add mana to your devotion. Devotion meaning count how many different symbols of the card there are. If it has 5 different mana symbols up here, that means the devotion is 5, and then you're getting a benefit instead of a deficit. Any less than 4 is not worth using Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx. Concealed Courtyard. Concealed Courtyard enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer lands. It adds white or black. Where high society and dark opportunity intersect. So as you can see, it needs to be played early. Very nice location. This is the Caves of Koilos. They did just create a lot of cave cards, but this isn't one of them. Land, tap, add 1 mana to your mana pool, colorless. Or tap, add 1 black or white to your mana pool. Cave of Koilos deals 1 damage to you. This can be offset with other cards, but it's not going to be. You're either going to be paying black or white. Most of the time, it's good to keep track of that. But eventually you'll be at a point where you don't need to, and you'll be paying colorless. I doubt it's going to be a cave in Retcon, because it is plural, more than 1 cave. It's an entire land of caves. Vault of the Archangel. This would be in reference to Avacyn. Add 1 colorless mana, as they most do. Pay 2 white and black. Tap it, so 5. Creatures you control gain Death Touch and Lifelink until the end of turn. For centuries, my creation kept this world in balance. Now only her shadow remains. Soren Markov. Still, good effect for 5, give your board Death Touch Lifelink. And here we have another Zendikar card. Crypt of Agadim enters the battlefield tapped. Tap, add black to your mana pool. Pay 2, tap. Add black to your mana pool for each black creature card in your graveyard. So, that'll make you lean into having black creatures in your graveyard. Sacrificing them, creating 1/1 tokens for more sacrificing and exiling of your opponent's creatures. Here we have Bright Climb Pathway, and it just adds white. But if need be, if you don't have enough mana for anything else early game, and you have too much white, it becomes Grim Climb Pathway. There we go. And of course it adds black to your mana pool. It's a useful, untapped, colored mana, but it will remain that color. Very nice that they went with some borderless cards. Dispeller's Capsule Foil. I didn't need to say foil. It costs 1. It's an artifact from Lara, specifically a Bant, Esper kind of effect. I find the symmetry pleasing. It rids the world of its offensive refuse while disposing of itself. From Proctor of the Clean, so that's probably from Esper. Pay 2 and 1 white and tap it. Sacrifice Dispeller's Capsule. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. So this is very deadly to even its own people of Esper. Most of them are artifact creatures. This is essentially a kill spell back then. But for 4, it's rather expensive. What we are doing, though, is recurring these kinds of effects more often. You do need to have board control though, and instead of a naturalize, we have forsake the worldly. Exile target artifact or enchantment, and if that effect has no use in the game you're playing, you can always cycle it for 2. 3 is the least I will pay for exiling something at speed, because you need to be able to contest cards when you need to. Instants are very useful, and naturalize or better cards than naturalize are needed. This can get rid of all the very useful indestructible effects that are more common, as well as god cards. Here we have Everflowing Chalice, 0, artifact, uncommon, multi-kicker 2. Everflowing Chalice enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it for each time it was kicked. Add colorless mana to your mana pool for each charge counter. So for 2, it creates 1. For 4, it creates 2. For 6, it creates 3, and so on. So you really use it for 2, 3, 6 most of the time. Ambition's cost is a sorcery. You draw 3 cards and lose 3 life. The use of this immeasurable because it only costs 4, and you need to gain as much card draw as possible. Card draw for life gain, life loss, isn't that bad. Soul Ring for 2, add 2 to your mana pool. And we have the first creature for value is Fleshbag Marauder. So it comes into play. It's a creature zombie warrior that is a 3/1. And when Fleshbag Marauder enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. This guy is the first of many cards that are at rate for their effect. He comes into play, and even if he chooses himself, he's killing himself, a creature, and getting you a 1/1 creature. Here we have Merciless Executioner. He enters the battlefield. Each player sacrifices a creature. He is also a 3/1. They printed more of these, and it's very useful. Diabolic Tutor. For 2 and 2 black, he's a sorcery speed. Search your library for a card and put that card into your hand. Then shuffle your library. We all know what that means. It's just a free card to get. It fills out any kind of combo that you're missing. The best ideas often come from the worst minds. Lingering Souls. For 2 colorless and 1 white. Put 2 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying onto the battlefield, and it has flashback. This isn't the most necessary, but this is what gets you a lot of creatures quickly in the early game, and in the late game, you will always have flashback to bring it back again. Damn is a sorcery. It's hard to tell, but it costs just 2 black mana, and it destroys target creature. A creature destroyed this way can be regenerated, or you can overload it for 2 colorless and 2 white, and that basically makes it a damnation. Very interesting concept. Very, very versatile. Not being able to be regenerated is not as often needed, but it's useful. Teysa, Forgotten Archangel. For 2, 2 white and 1 black, so a bit more lopsided to white, you get a legendary creature angel. She has flying, lifelink. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, return that card to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. She is free recursion and exiling the opponent's creatures. It's lopsided. It's very much in the style of black-white to have effects that are only fair for you and punish the opponent for the same effect. Here we have Skyclave Shade. So the more black creatures we have to sacrifice, the more we need them to be able to be brought back. Skyclave Shade is a creature shade for 1 white, or 1 colorless, sorry, and 1 black. And he has Kicker, 2 colorless, 1 black. Skyclave Shade can't be block. No, Skyclave Shade can't block. Oh my fucking god. If Skyclave Shade was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if Skyclave Shade is in your graveyard and it's your turn, you may cast it from your graveyard this turn. So you may cast it for 2, which may include its kicker. Skyclave Shade. It's a 3/1, and it can be a 5/3. And he keeps coming back. Here we have a Bolas's Citadel for 3 colorless and 3 black. It's a legendary artifact, so it's a massive monolith. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play land cards and cast spells from the top of your library. You may cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than pay its mana cost. Sacrifice 10 non-land permanents. Each opponent loses 10 life. We're less concerned about each opponent losing 10 life, more so being able to play cards for free from the top of your deck on this very Mortal Kombat style Temple of Doom. That should be a stage. I guess that's Nicol Bolas on the top. Right there. Divinity of Pride. Costs hybrid, black or white, 5 of them. He's a creature spirit avatar. Before they invented gods, they had these types of creatures, avatars. And this has flying lifelink. Divinity of Pride gets +4/+4. Yes, he gets +4. +4/+4 as long as you have 25 or more health. Very easy with EDH to just play him for an 8/8. Very cool. Interesting design. You know, when you create rules and limits that you can't create gods, you have to create new kinds of ideas. And that's one of them. And I like that from Lorwyn. They didn't go all into naming conventions that didn't need to be. But this is one of the best cards. Identity Crisis costs 2 white, and 2 black. It's a sorcery, and remove all cards in target player's hand and graveyard from the game. To join our ranks, one must be pure. To be pure, one must be blessed by the Ethereum. To be blessed, one must forget oneself. Either sworn prayer. So this is when the Esper were being more proactive with their ruminations. And this card will win games. The ability to exile an entire hand and graveyard, whether late game or early, if the opponent's deck runs on their graveyard, or if they have no recursion. For 6 mana, you win the game. It has happened quite often. Indestructibility for 3 colorless and 1 white, meaning any color mana or colorless mana, and 1 white mana. You get an enchantment aura. Enchant permanent. Enchanted permanent is indestructible. And by making an enchanted permanent indestructible, let's say you're general, it now sits on the field and keeps that very good effect it was needed. It can also be like a Darksteel Plate, but we haven't gotten there yet. We have a Nomad's Assembly instead. For 6, you get 1/1 white core soldier creatures for each creature you control, and then you rebound. And rebound means you get to cast the spell at the beginning of your next upkeep. If you're rebounding, This card will produce twice as many cards as last turn. Very effective. Knight of the White Orchid. For 2 mana, one of each white. Creature Knight Human has first strike and 2/2. When Knight of the White Orchid comes into play, if an opponent controls more lands than you may search your library for a Plains card, put it into play, and shuffle your library. Both guide and guard on an open plane. You're going to be at a deficit sometimes, and that's okay, because this guy will get you more mana. And the opponents, if they're green or anything like that, will often want to play mana faster than you. Let them, because you have your own late game versions of mana fetching. Hanwar Militia Captain. For 1 of any color and 1 white, you get a creature human soldier. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 or more creatures, transform Hanwar Militia Captain. An incentive to create more white 1 creatures. He's a 2/2 himself. Or her, I guess. Her reputation inspires both loyalty and adoration. And when we flip her, I'm sure they'll show me something even better. With a Westvale Cult Leader, it's a white creature. Westvale Cult Leader's power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. At the beginning of your end step, put a 1/1 white and black human cleric creature token onto the battlefield. So, she's going all after Ormondal. She's even the Westvale. This is an excellent creature production once it flips. White and black creatures. Her power and toughness scaling is very good as well, but more creatures means more creatures to sacrifice to kill cards. Herald of Anafenza is a 1-cost creature human soldier. He has Outlast, which is pay 2 of any color and 1 white, and tap him. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Outlast is only a sorcery. Whenever you activate Herald of Anafenza's Outlast ability, put a 1/1 white warrior creature token onto the battlefield, and he is a 1/2. So for 1, you get a 1/2 that can pay 3 and tap it. If you get a Soul Ring, it's right away, it feels like. But other than that, he is creature production while gaining himself power. And here we have a Cage Sun. Everyone loves Cage Sun. Cage Sun enters the battlefield, choose a color. Creatures of the chosen color get +1/+1. Whenever a land's ability adds 1 or more mana of the chosen color to your mana pool, add 1 additional mana of the color to your mana pool. How did they cage a sun? I guess because it's magic. Here we have Thraben Doomsayer. For 1 colorless and 2 white mana, he's a creature human cleric. Tap, put a 1/1 white human creature token onto the battlefield. And Fateful Hour, so if your life total is 5 or less, other creatures you control get +2/+2, and he's a 2/2. He just creates creatures. Here is Blade Splicer, 2 colorless, creature human artificer 1/1. When Blade Splicer enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 colorless golem artifact creature token onto the battlefield. Golem creatures you control have first strike. Her golem is the value. She herself is going to be recursed quite often, recursion being the name of the game with this. Bringing her back, bringing in more golems, as well as her ability to be sacrificed to exile cards. Here we have Intrepid Hero. He is very helpful. This guy for 2 colorless and 1 white, 2 of any color and 1 white. He is a creature human soldier. You tap him, Destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. So once the opponent is in late game, and they're creating Crater Hoof Behemoths, this guy at least contends against it. A fool knows no fear, a hero shows no fear, and he's a 1/1. Not very power, not a lot of toughness to deal with, but for destroying a creature and being able to be sacrificed when things get bad, he's very helpful. Twilight Drover. For 2 colorless and 1 white, he's a creature spirit. Whenever a creature token leaves the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Twilight Drover. Pay 2 of any color and 1 white. Remove a +1/+1 counter from Twilight Drover. Put 2 1/1 white creature token spirits with flying onto the battlefield, and he's a 1/1. So what is that, like an infinite loop if you have enough mana? That's pretty sweet. I like that. I think this guy is very strong. And here we have one of the cards to bring back cards like Twilight Drover. He can be brought back with a card like Rhea Dawnbringer. For 6 mana, she has 6 colorless mana and 3 white mana. She's a legendary creature angel, flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And she is a 4/6. Yes, it is quite a bit of mana, but because she is a creature and other creatures are being brought back into play, it is far more useful to have her on the field as an indestructible creature than not to have her. An Emeria Shepherd is perhaps a better use, but this is exactly how power scaling go. For Emeria Shepherd is a 5 cost, 5 colorless mana, 2 white mana, creature angel, flying, landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may return target non-land permanent from your graveyard to the battlefield. If that land is a plains, you may return target non-land permanent card to the battlefield instead. Okay, so first it puts it to your hand. If it was a plains, you put it to the battlefield. And she's a 4/4. So, technically, she's trying to be a better version of Rhea Dawnbringer. But landfall isn't guaranteed. On the other hand, Eternal Dragon will help that recursion, because, like last time, he is a 5 colorless mana, 2 white mana, creature dragon spirit with flying, and he has pay 3, pay 2 white, return an Eternal Dragon from your graveyard to the hand, play this only during your upkeep, and plane cycling. You discard this card from your hand and pay 2, search your library for a plains, and put it to your hand, shuffle your library. And he's a 5/5 dragon. Very useful to have a recurring creature that constantly can fetch you mana when you can pay for it. Adakar Valkyrie, for 4 colorless mana and 2 white mana, snow creature angel. There's not a lot of snow creatures in here, but this is one of the very best ones because it has flying, vigilance, is a 4/5, and similar to Rhea Dawnbringer, tap. When target creature other than Adakar Valkyrie is put into the graveyard this turn, return that creature card to the battlefield under your control. So either the cards you sacrifice get sacrificed and she brings them back, or you choose your opponent's cards that are going to die and be destroyed. Krovax, Ascended Hero. 4 colorless, 2 white mana, legendary creature human lord. Other white creatures get +1/+1, other non-white creatures get -1/-1. Pay 2 life, return him to your hand. He is a 4/4. Not a lot of lords, but he is one of the better ones, especially with all this ability to return back to the hand. He is very effective. He lives quite a bit longer. Here we have Sunblast Angel, 4 mana of any color, 2 white, creature angel, Flying, Sunblast Angel enters the battlefield, destroy all tapped creatures. And he is a 4/5. Here we have Knight Captain of Eos. 4 mana of any color. 1 white. Creature, Human Knight. Knight Captain of Eos comes into play. Put 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens into play. Sacrifice a soldier, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn, and pay 1 white. He's a 2/2, and he brings in 2 1/1 white creature tokens. So right away, for 5, it's almost like a kill card, but you don't really want to waste it just for that 1 instant kill. Ideally, this card can keep bringing in more creature tokens and preventing damage like a Holy Day. World Queller is an excellent use of sacrifice because he is a 3 of any color, 2 white mana, creature avatar from Zendikar. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may choose a creature card type. You may choose a card type, and creature would be one of them. Enchantment is another. Battle or Planeswalker, any of those card types. Artifact. If you do, each player sacrifices a permanent of that type. You don't even need a permanent of that type to activate this effect. For a 4/4 creature, another excellent opportunity to bring back more cards or use those tokens. Another card that uses the tokens is a creature, Human Monk, 3 of any color, 5 converted mana cost with 2 white. Vigilance. Geist Honored Monk's power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control. Geist Honored Monk enters the battlefield. Put 2 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying onto the battlefield. You'll find a lot of spirit tokens are 1/1s that are flying. She's very powerful, very effective. Ophiomancer for 2 and 1 black. Creature, Human Shaman. Beginning of each upkeep, if you control no snakes, put a 1/1 black snake creature token with Death Touch onto the battlefield. A creature that creates more black creatures is very, very useful. Only 2 toughness, but it does create creatures that kill when they die. Death Touch, very effective. Royal Assassin, very effective, with 3 converted mana cost, 1 of any color, 2 black. Human Creature Assassin. Tap, destroy tapped creatures. Just that, you tap him, another creature's tapped, it's dead. 1/1. He's a bit of a knife dick. White Sun Zenith. For X and 3 white, put X 2/2 white creature cat tokens onto the battlefield. And shuffle this back into your library as an instant speed. Very strong. The Zenith cards, very effective. Martial Coup. For X and 2 white. It's a sorcery. Put X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield. If X is 5 or more, destroy all creatures. You usually want to destroy all creatures. Here we have True Conviction, which is just a better than Rage Reflection. Creatures you control have double strike and lifelink. It's not even comparable to Rage Reflection anymore, giving just double strike to double strike and lifelink. Last time we had Marshal's Anthem, so it is a kicker, so you keep paying 2 mana. It is a 4 converted mana cost with 2 white color. Creatures you control get +1/+1, and for each time it was kicked, bring X creature cards to the battlefield. X equals the number of times Marshal's Anthem was kicked. There's a picture of everybody on Zendikar having a good time. And here we have Crackdown. You may think it's antithesis to have this card in with converted mana cost 3, 2 colorless, 1 white, enchantment. Non-white creatures with power 3 or greater don't untap during their controller's untap step. But with all the 1/1 white tokens you'll be creating, or being able to control the board by sacrificing those creatures, your opponents will not be able to have a strong enough board to contend with Crackdown. Next we have Phyrexian Arena. At the beginning of upkeep, lose 1 life enchantment for 3 mana, 2 black. Path of Peril. Now this is complicated because this is an effect that I don't think they're going to be coming back to for quite a bit until they can clean this up. But Path of Peril costs any color, black, black, sorcery. Destroy all creatures with mana value 2 or less. Okay, but then it has Cleave for 6. Destroy all creatures. Okay. So for 3, destroy all creatures with mana value 2 or less. Or pay 6 to cleave, destroy all creatures. It's hard to gauge. Here we have destroy soul transfer. For 3 mana, 2 black. Sorcery, choose one. If you control an artifact and enchantment as you cast the spell, you may choose both. Exile target creature or planeswalker. Return target creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. You just want creatures. If you control an artifact and enchantment, you can do both. In Garruk's Wake for 9. Sorcery, destroy all creatures you don't control, all planeswalkers you don't control. Board wipe things you don't control. Ancient Craving, kind of like Ambition's cost. It costs 4 mana, 1 black. You draw 3 cards and lose 3 life. Just good to have more of the same, because now you have the same card to keep using. Ondu Inversion is a 6 mana cost of any color and 2 white. Sorcery, destroy all non-land permanents. But you can flip it, and if it can become Ondu Sky Ruins, and it enters play tapped and makes white mana. What a fucking stupid idea. I guess if any card would ask for a permanent to be recurred, does this card count? Because the other side is a permanent. Probably not. Planar Outburst. For 5 converted mana cost, 2 white. Sorcery, destroy all non-land creatures, and it has Awaken. For 8 mana, if you cast this spell, put 4 +1/+1 counters on target land, it becomes an elemental land. It has haste. It is still a land, so basically this kind of card makes cards that are land monsters. Land monsters being subject to destroy target creature, but destroy target creature, the more options they have, the more options they're going to have to waste. Conqueror's Pledge for 5 mana and a kicker 6. Put 6 1/1 white core soldier tokens onto the battlefield. Or, if it was kicked, put 12 of those tokens instead. Put 6 or 12 1/1 white core creature tokens. Core soldier creature tokens. Right, because you want to sacrifice soldiers to the Captain of Eos. Increasing Devotion, though, for 5 converted mana cost, put 5 white human creature tokens onto the battlefield. If Increasing Devotion was cast from the graveyard, put 10 of those tokens onto the battlefield instead, and it has flashback for 9. So 5 or 10, 15 in 1 card. That is a lot of creatures. And here we have Root. For 3 of any color and 2 white, it's a sorcery. You may cast Root anytime you could cast an instant if you pay 2 or more to cast it. Destroy all creatures, they can't be regenerated. It's not 2 or more, but it is 2 more. It's a picture of Elesh Norn just wiping everybody. But we know from the lore that Elspeth is stronger, apparently. Because now we have Wrath of God for 4 converted mana cost and 2 white. Destroy all creatures, they can't be regenerated at sorcery speed. Mondrak, Glory Dominus, for 2 converted mana cost. It's a legendary creature, Phyrexian something. Here, what is he? Phyrexian Horror, probably. So double your tokens, and then pay 1 of any color, 2 life or 2 white. Does it sacrifice creatures to get you a divinity counter on this, so it can't be... It has indestructible. Whatever this guy says, it has the same thing, pretty much. Yeah, exile 3 creature cards from your graveyard, put indestructible counter on Mondrak. Maybe I should have this guy before this guy, just so I know what Mondrak does for the second part. So what does Drivnod do? So Drivnod is the Drivnod Carnage Dominus. And he is 5 converted mana cost. Legendary creature Phyrexian Horror. If a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time, and he has the powerful exiling effect to create an indestructible counter on himself, and he is an 8/3 as well. So this Phyrexian Horror creature and this Phyrexian Horror creature, both in tandem, are going to be helping out with Teysa Orzhov. And now we have Grave Titan, Creature Giant, for 6, 2 black. It needs to be 2 black. Death Touch. Whenever Grave Titan enters the battlefield or attacks, put 2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield. He is a 6/6. I like this guy. But there's definitely more giants. Sun Titan is more recursion. 6 mana cost with 2 white needed. Creature Giant with Vigilance. Whenever a Sun Titan enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return target permanent converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And he is a 6/6. Sorin, Lord of Innistrad, for 4 mana cost, 2 of any color, 1 white, 1 black. He is a Sorin Planeswalker, probably retcon to be legendary. And he is +1 counter, put a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink onto the battlefield. You get an emblem if you -2. Creatures you control get +1/+0. And the final ability, destroy up to 3 target creatures and or other planeswalkers. Return each one from the graveyard to the battlefield under your control that were destroyed this way. Well, that's mean. But more likely you're going to be spending it on the emblem, because the emblem is permanent. There are no cards that get rid of emblems at the moment. Always prioritize emblems. Just like Elish Norn, Mother of Machines, is a 5 mana cost needing 1 white, legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. Praetors being their highest echelon. Vigilance. If a permanent enters the battlefield, causes a triggering ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So all those, if a creature enters, if this thing happens, if essentially, then Junji Ito says it happens twice as often for you and not for your opponents for this 4/7 Elish Norn legendary creature. Just like Erebos, God of the Dead, is an indestructible legendary enchantment creature god who wants devotion to black 5 or more. But if it's less, he is not a creature. Your opponents can't gain life, but you can pay 2 life, 2 mana, and draw a card. If he is a creature, he is a 5/7, which is very strong for 4 mana. An indestructible god card getting buffed by Elish Norn, the Grand Cenobite. Legendary creature Praetor. Vigilance. Other creatures you control get +2/+2. Creatures your opponents control get -2/-2. She's a 4/7 as well. Bontu the Glorified for 3 mana, 1 black needed. Legendary creature god. Menace, indestructible. Bond 2, the glorified, can't attack or block unless a creature died under your control this turn. Pay 1 of any color. Pay 1 black. Sacrifice another creature. Scry 1. Each opponent loses life, and you gain 1 life. I like the art. This effect is alright. But you only get a 4/6 for 3 mana. Menace Indestructible is nice, but he doesn't have haste. Brimaz, King of Oreskos. He's a Kitty King for 3 mana, 2 of any color. No, 2 white, 1 of any color. Legendary creature, Cat Soldier. Vigilance. Brimaz, King of Oreskos attacks. Put a 1/1 white Cat Soldier token creature with Vigilance onto the battlefield attacking. When Brimaz is blocking, put a 1/1 white Cat Soldier creature token with Vigilance onto the battlefield blocking that creature. For this 3/4, he gets a 1/1 attacking or blocking with him, essentially. Very useful for this because you're constantly making more creature tokens. The more creature tokens you have, the more Sublight Archangel is a 4 mana, 2 white creature angel with flying exalted. Other creatures you control have exalted. Exalted being when a creature attacks alone, it gets +1/+1 for each card with exalted. Atheros, God of Passage, another god card, specifically white-black. Interesting that it'd be different because he's kind of like Charon. And he is a 3 mana cost, 1 of any color, 1 white, 1 black. Legendary enchantment creature god. Indestructible. As long as your devotion to white and black is less than 7, Atheros isn't a creature. Whenever another creature you own dies, return it to your hand unless target opponent pays 3 life. So you can target an opponent to pay 3 life, or you get your creature back. I think they're most likely going to pay you the 3 life, unless it's a very strong card. He's not going to be a creature all that often either. For 7 devotion, and I believe they count themselves, so it's really 5. And just like the last god card, it is a good rate to get his creature up to be an attacker and indestructible. Champion of Stray Souls is 6 mana cost, 2 black. Very effective because he's a creature skeleton warrior who says pay 5 and tap him, sacrifice X other creatures, return X target creature cards from the graveyard to the battlefield, and then you pay 5, put Champion of Stray Souls from the top of your library from your graveyard. So even if he's in the graveyard, he still can be replayed. Very effective. A recurring recursion. Here we have one of the cards that will always be useful to trigger, an Ashen Rider. It is a flying creature Archon that is a 5/5. When Ashen Rider enters the battlefield or dies, exile target permanent. So it's always triggering back and forth, especially with those very villainous Phyrexian god cards. Entreat the Angels specifically is XX, 2, 3 white colors, create X 4/4 white creature angel tokens. That doesn't seem all that useful, but if you can miracle, you can create X white angel tokens for X and 2 white. So you're getting a lot of angels. And here we have the final card to wipe the board completely clear is exile all creatures, descend upon the sinful. For 6 mana, 2 white, Delirium, create a 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. Whatever. Why do they have to make these cards so crazy? Exile all creatures and then get a 4/4 creature token with flying. Just 1 for 6. Give me exile all cards. And that was Perspective Made Easy.